Blake Lively, once known as the Golden Girl of Hollywood, rose to fame with charm, grace, and undeniable talent from her early days on the hit television series Gossip Girl to her critically acclaimed performances in films like The Shallows and A Simple Favor. She seemed unstoppable. Her image was one of elegance, success, and poise. The public loved her, the media celebrated her, and brands lined up for her endorsement. But as with many stories in the world of fame, the perfect image often hides deeper truths, and with growing scrutiny of celebrities online and in the courtroom, many began to wonder if everything about Blake's life was as polished as it seemed. Behind the flawless red carpet appearances and stylish interviews, there were murmurs, whispers of behavior that did not match the public persona. The early 2020s brought a shift in how audiences engaged with their favorite stars. The rise of social media platforms and independent creators allowed the public to see beyond the headlines. People were no longer satisfied with curated photos and rehearsed soundbites. They wanted transparency, they wanted truth. And in that demand for authenticity, many celebrities found themselves under a harsh spotlight. For Blake Lively, the shift began slowly. It started with fan forums, where past interviews were rewatched and dissected. It moved to YouTube, where commentary channels began raising questions about her statements, associations, and silence on controversial issues, while many continued to support her. A growing number of critics emerged. These critics were not driven by hate, but by curiosity, by a need to hold all public figures to the same standards regardless of fame. Around this time, more creators began revisiting moments in Blake's career that had once been overlooked. One such moment was her 2012 lifestyle brand launch, which had drawn criticism for appearing tone-deaf during a time of national hardship. Critics pointed out that while many Americans were struggling financially, the brand promoted luxury and exclusivity without acknowledging broader issues. This was not a scandal in the traditional sense, but it planted a seed, a sense that perhaps the image was more carefully crafted than it first appeared. Meanwhile, in her personal life, Blake remained relatively private. Her marriage to actor Ryan Reynolds was widely seen as a Hollywood success story. The couple shared witty exchanges online, posted loving tributes, and appeared together at high-profile events. Yet, even in their relationships, some fans began to notice a pattern, one that suggested Blake's public image was being managed with great precision while leaving little room for vulnerability or mistake. As the years went on, more voices joined the conversation. Some former collaborators began speaking out, not with accusations, but with subtle observations about Blake's insistence on control during productions or her reluctance to address social issues publicly. Others questioned her approach to activism, particularly when it came to causes that demanded more than a single post or donation. They wanted action, accountability, and real conversation. Then came the moment that shifted the conversation entirely. A lawsuit was filed not by a major media outlet or a former co-star, but by a group of independent digital creators. They claimed that content referencing Blake had been repeatedly flagged and removed from platforms. They alleged that this was not a coincidence, but a coordinated effort to suppress commentary and criticism. The claim was bold and difficult to prove, but it sparked a massive wave of online debate. Suddenly, Blake Lively's name was trending not because of a new film or fashion campaign, but because of legal questions surrounding freedom of speech, censorship, and the power of celebrity in the digital age. People who had once celebrated her began to ask difficult questions, and those who had been quietly critical now found themselves with an audience ready to listen. The backlash did not come all at once. It built steadily over time. Creators shared their stories. Some of their content had been taken down, others received vague warnings from platforms. Still others were threatened with legal action for what they believed was fair use commentary. The mood online shifted from curiosity to concern, from admiration to skepticism. Blake Lively and her team remained mostly silent during this period, issuing brief statements through representatives that emphasized respect for creative expression while denying any wrongdoing. But the damage had begun. Public trust is fragile, especially when it feels as though someone with influence is attempting to control the narrative in ways that silence others in the background. Legal experts weighed in. Some defended Blake's right to protect her image, especially against false or malicious content. Others warned that overly aggressive legal strategies could backfire both legally and in the court of public opinion. The situation was complex, layered, and evolving rapidly. With each new revelation, the pressure mounted. As public interest grew, so did media coverage. Mainstream outlets began reporting on the allegations, summarizing creator complaints, and analyzing the broader implications for Celebrities and content creators alike, commentators questioned whether this case could set a precedent, whether celebrities could continue to shape public discourse without accountability, and whether fans would continue to support stars who appeared to use their power to silence criticism. This scene in Blake Lively's story was not about a single moment or mistake, but about the slow unraveling of a carefully maintained public image. The rise before the storm had come with adoration, applause, and admiration. Now the stage was set for deeper truths to emerge and for consequences to take hold, because in the age of digital transparency, even the most polished image can be questioned, and when the audience begins to turn, no amount of PR spin can completely reverse the tide. As the public questioned Blake Lively's silence and the digital community demanded accountability, the situation took a legal turn. What began as online discussions and commentary soon spilled into real legal territory, and with that came an entirely new level of attention, scrutiny, and consequence. The initial lawsuit filed by independent content creators alleged that their videos discussing Blake's public behavior and past statements were systematically removed, flagged, or demonetized. Some claimed they received copyright strikes, others insisted they were being silenced through less obvious platform enforcement tactics. This was no longer just a public relations issue, it was a legal battleground, and one that forced Blake's team to respond more directly, while Blake herself remained largely out of the public eye. During this time, her legal representatives issued formal responses. They denied any wrongdoing, asserted her right to protect her image, and emphasized that any takedowns were a result of platform policy, not personal interference. The creators, however, pushed back. They compiled receipts, screenshots, emails, and records of takedowns, and shadow banning. The case became a landmark moment in the debate over how far celebrities could go to control online narratives. Legal analysts began dissecting the case in public forums, podcasts, and YouTube commentary channels. Some saw it as a necessary reckoning for celebrities who had long operated without being held accountable by the digital community. Others warned that if the case succeeded, it could open the door to broader restrictions on content creation, especially when it came to a critical or analytical commentary. What made the situation more intense was the scale of attention it received. The creators involved in the lawsuit were not household names, but their voices represented a much larger concern: the fear that powerful individuals with access to legal teams could target smaller creators for simply speaking freely about public figures. In response, more content creators began joining the movement, posting their own experiences, using hashtags, demanding transparency, and sharing how they too had faced similar actions when speaking about powerful celebrities. This added fuel to an already growing fire. Blake Lively's image, once sparkling and untouched by controversy, was now tied to conversations about censorship, legal suppression, and the responsibilities that come with fame. Every move she made or did not make was analyzed and interpreted by the public. The silence from her camp no longer felt like grace. Under pressure, to many it felt like avoidance. At this point, legal experts weighed in with differing views. Some argued that Blake had a legitimate interest in protecting her reputation, particularly if false claims were made against her, but others cautioned that if her team was overreaching, it could lead to serious legal consequences. In fact, several attorneys speaking anonymously to the media suggested that aggressive legal action aimed at silencing criticism often ends up creating more damage than the original content ever could. One of the most discussed moments during this period came when internal documents from one of the platforms allegedly confirmed that a set of videos discussing Blake Lively had been flagged not for violating guidelines, but due to external legal pressure. While the documents did not name her directly, the timing and context matched the claims made by the plaintiffs, and that alone was enough to further turn public opinion. Suddenly, headlines across digital outlets were raising hard questions. Had Blake Lively's team pressured platforms to silence creators? Had those actions violated principles of fair use and freedom of expression? And most importantly, what precedent would this set for other celebrities and influencers who might choose the same path when faced with criticism? As pressure mounted on all sides, Blake's legal team issued a longer statement reiterating her commitment to respectful public discourse while doubling down on her right to protect against defamation. The statement was carefully worded and avoided any admission of guilt, but the timing was significant. It showed that the concerns raised by creators and commentators were being taken seriously. At the same time, media outlets began digging deeper into past incidents that had previously been brushed aside. There were whispers of similar behavior from Years prior instances where journalists were allegedly discouraged from asking certain questions or stories that had mysteriously disappeared from entertainment blogs. While none of these incidents were directly proven, they added to a growing narrative that suggested Blake and her team had been controlling the media narrative far more aggressively than the public knew. This was not the kind of exposure any celebrity wants. It was relentless, it was detailed, and it was being driven not by traditional media, but by independent voices who refused to be silenced. This created a unique dynamic where the public no longer saw Blake as just another actress, but as a symbol of the struggle between celebrity power and the freedom of digital speech. In court filings, the creators continued to argue their position. They were not attempting to defame or harm Blake Lively. They insisted they were engaging in commentary, analysis, and criticism, all protected under fair use law. Their legal strategy was straightforward. They wanted transparency, and they wanted protection from what they described as bullying tactics used by high-profile individuals to suppress dissent. The court process moved slowly, but its impact was immediate. Social media was flooded with clips discussing the case. Legal influencers weighed in, and videos about Blake Lively's alleged legal overreach received millions of views. The once untouchable star was now at the center of a controversy that seemed to grow more complex each day as the legal web unraveled. The consequences began to take shape, and the next chapter in this story would determine not only Blake's future in the public eye, but also the future of creator rights and free speech in the digital age. As the legal battle continued and more evidence surfaced, the most noticeable shift came not from the courtroom, but from the public itself. The very audience that had once adored Blake Lively began to reconsider their loyalty. Her once flawless reputation began to show cracks, not because of one single mistake, but because of the mounting perception that something deeper was at play. Viewers who had followed her career from the early Gossip Girl days felt disappointed. Fans who once saw her as a role model began expressing doubt and confusion in comment sections, forums, and social media threads. Blake Lively's name became a symbol of a growing cultural conversation about authenticity, power, and the role of celebrities in shaping public narratives. On platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, creators began compiling timelines highlighting inconsistencies and unanswered questions. They revisited older interviews, promotional campaigns, and social media posts, analyzing how her public image had been shaped over time and how certain narratives had been strategically avoided. This type of content resonated with viewers because it felt like uncovering a carefully hidden truth. What made this shift so powerful was the tone of the commentary. It was not driven by hate or personal vendettas. Instead, it reflected a genuine desire for transparency, a sense that celebrities, especially those with immense influence, should not be allowed to act without accountability. The phrase "actions have consequences" began appearing more frequently in connection to Blake Lively's name. Even longtime supporters expressed concern. They said they still respected her talent, but felt uncomfortable with how the situation was being handled. They asked why she remained silent, why her team appeared to target smaller creators, and why she had not addressed the concerns directly. They did not want perfection, they wanted honesty, and for many, that honesty felt absent. Brands who had partnered with Blake began taking note as well. While no major endorsements were publicly pulled, there was a noticeable quieting of campaigns involving her. Some fashion and beauty brands shifted their focus to other ambassadors, while others paused promotional content that featured her. The silence was not confirmation of wrongdoing, but in the world of branding, perception is everything. Public relations experts began weighing in during interviews and online discussions. They noted that Blake's response, or lack of it, was not aligning with modern expectations. Audiences today expect real-time communication, transparency, and a willingness to face tough questions. Silence, especially during controversy, is often interpreted as guilt or disconnection from reality. The situation took another dramatic turn when a leaked video circulated showing a behind-the-scenes moment from a past interview. In it, Blake appeared to instruct the crew to avoid certain topics. The clip was short and out of context, but it was enough to stir new questions. Had she always controlled interviews that tightly? Were there other moments the public had never seen? Was the image of openness and accessibility just another layer of branding? The backlash was not limited to the internet. Mainstream media outlets picked up on the growing wave of criticism. Headlines shifted from covering Blake's projects to dissecting the legal situation, the online reaction, and the possible fallout. Articles asked whether this would permanently damage her career or if she could stage a public comeback, with the right strategy, the ripple effect extended beyond just Blake Lively. Other celebrities began facing questions about their own efforts to manage public perception. Creators who had once felt nervous about criticizing stars became more emboldened, and platforms that once complied quickly with takedown requests began reviewing their policies.